as we become further advanced on our journey, we are then going to come to some crossroads with some of our interests. We're going to have to prune some things off so that we can really focus and become excellent.
If you're not conscious about your investment strategy, you won't end up where you want to be, not financially or as a human. On this show, we interview highly successful investors and share how they overcame limitations to become unstoppable forces of success. If you're ready to learn what it is to be a conscious investor so you can end up where you want, keep listening.
Awesome to be back with you, Conscious Investor. I'm so excited about this end of the year review that we have been working on the last few podcast sessions. If you haven't already listened to all of them, if you're a new conscious investor, and maybe you don't even feel like you're a conscious investor yet, but you're just drawn to this ecosystem, welcome. Super excited to have you here. And I want to invite you right now to just hit whatever subscribe, follow button on the platform that you are listening or watching on so that you never miss another episode. Each Monday, I present a mindset episode. And then on Thursdays, we have an expert, not just someone, an expert either on some topic having to do with generating wealth. And going into 2024, we're also going to bring on health experts because the three pillars of a conscious investor are health, mindset, and wealth. And we want to make sure that we are nurturing every single part of the conscious investor. Today, we are going to be diving into setting our intentions. So far we've talked about why are goals important? Why do they even matter? We have reflected on the goals that we've had for the past year. And we've also reminded ourselves that it might not be the last chronological year. It might be the last quarter, the last 6 months, whatever duration we want to reflect back on. Then we went into vision building. And now here we are at setting intentions. And this is a part where we really start digging into what is it we're trying to generate moving forward. As we're talking about vision is the springboard into our intentions, into our strategies and tactics. Because if we aren't clear about the vision and where we're headed, oh my goodness, we're going to be lost. It's like taking a road trip from North Idaho down to Florida, and we have no roadmap, no GPS, no cell phone, no Google, no Siri, no anything, right? We want to actually know, how are we going to get to where we want to go? We don't want to find ourselves standing at the shore of the ocean line, looking out to the vastness around us, saying like, how are we going to get around? Where do we even want to go from here? We talked about that in the episode on vision. Okay. So we're diving into this topic today of really getting into the strategies and tactics, because again, if you don't know the little steps that you're going to take, it's going to be impossible. Not impossible. That is an exaggeration. Everything is possible, but it's going to be extremely difficult and likely very frustrating to get where you want to go. Through this series, I've shared that years ago, I felt like I have all this potential bundled up inside of me. I know God created every single human uniquely and with a unique contribution. I knew that about myself. I just didn't know how to access it, how to bring it out into existence, into the real world. And so having a clear vision and then having these strategies and tactics to back it up make all the difference in the world. And I am saying, I'll add into that, we have to have a strong mindset. And without a strong mindset, again, makes the resistance is nearly impossible to break through. That's why we have so many people floundering around, so many people caught on that hamster wheel of life, just going through the motions. And we don't want to live like that. We really want that potential that we're created with to come out into the world. So as we dive into this today, we'll be talking about the 5 criteria that we need for every single one of our goals. In fact, we're going to narrow this down. We're not going to tackle every goal all at once. And I'm going to share some personal stories because, boy, I love to try to conquer so many big things all at once. And it really provides a lot of setbacks. Maybe you feel the same way. It's like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I can write the book. I can launch the course. I can speak at all these events. I can guest on podcasts. I can invest in a new deal. at some point we have to say, how are we doing this? Is this mediocre, or are we actually showing up in a way that is with excellence, right? So we're talking about that 5 criteria that we need. We'll look for lead and lag indicators, and we're going to talk about the necessity of keeping score. Before I go into all of these awesome things that are really going to help you find those strategies and tactics to bring that potential, that vision, that concept you have to reality into the real world, I want to remind you that, of course, Conscious Investor Growth Day is right around the corner. I mean, March is going to be here before we blink, and you don't want to miss out. The tickets are limited, and this is your opportunity to come to be around massive entrepreneurs, highly successful investors. You're going to be around just powerful mindsets. This is a event where you come as a stranger, you leave with friends, because conscious investors, you might be scattered across the country, but you are so like-minded. And to be in a room, not too big of a space, but to be in a space where you can, break bread, you can listen to the same speakers, and you can actually get to know each other is such a gift in life. And I have no doubt in my mind that this year, again, will lead to powerful friendships and business alliances. So you don't want to miss out. Head over to consciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com and grab your tickets while they're there. And just keep in mind, this is an event where we are closing the gap, the distance between the stage and the speakers, because we want to pour into you elite speakers flying in from across the country and some local speakers joining us that are just powerhouses ready to serve you, to pour into you, to allow you to really grow and transform during this short 3-day event. Also, it's at the gorgeous Coeur d'Alene Resort. So can we just add a little magic involved here? Because that's pretty magical. All right. Make sure you head to consciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com to snag your tickets. I think I'm too focused right now. I'm so excited about talking about intentions. I'm having trouble staying on track with the Growth Summit. I want to dive into this because it's something I have struggled with. We all have our Achilles heel if we're honest with ourselves. And it's really important that we are honest with ourselves so that we can mitigate the risk and just address ourselves for this is the reality. This is how it goes. So here's the reality is that, as I mentioned, I like to try to tackle a whole bunch of big projects all at once. And this is a lifelong, this is one of those things that's been woven into me throughout my entire life. Not that anyone intentionally did that. It's just I had this propensity to create and generate this in my life. And it's really important to understand our unique hardwiring, whether it was just by nurture or nature, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. I've done a lot of reflecting to realize and to discover some consistent patterns in my life that go back to when I was a child. I don't think that my parents taught me any of the, hey, take too much, bite more off than you can chew type thing. I like to dive into the deep end, see if I can swim. And that's not always the best, especially when we want to gain momentum and we want to do things with excellence. So if you're like me, I want to encourage you that it's not, it can go into remission. It's not permanent. And there is a way that you can create some strategies around yourself so that you can really, truly move forward. Proof of concept. I've been podcasting now twice a week for the last almost 4 solid years. I cannot believe it's been that long. It's amazing. Right. And so I want to encourage you, you don't have like some death sentence for whatever your Achilles heel might be, whatever the pattern that you might have in your life. It's okay. If you are committed, you can move forward and you can overwrite some of that code with a new code. And quite frankly, I don't know that we can totally extract. I would really like to be able to extract and eliminate some of the old code in myself, right? But I don't know if I can, and I don't know if it's necessary, provided I'm intentional. And that's the benefit right there. When we have a high level of awareness, then we are far more intentional about the choices that we are making. And that makes all the difference in the world because success comes with intentional action. It doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. One of the things that I loved in The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran, and I'm going to be referencing and referring to this single book. I know that's crazy. This single book the entire time, because I think it's good to follow a formula. Now, I've referenced in this series Donald Miller's book, Hero on a Mission. I love this book. I think that Donald Miller also has strong strategies and tactics in his book for creating that momentum. I don't want to mix them. I don't want to try to blend them together for you because I think that we can follow a clear straight line of thinking. And I'm not going to regurgitate the entire book. I'm going to pull out just a few of the highlights that I think will give you enough of a springboard to either say, okay, I got it from here because conscious investor, you're smart, you're successful. It's not like you haven't done anything in your life. And so you have a backstory that is strong for you. And some of you reading this who are, rewriting some of the past code in their life, like me, you might consider picking up a copy of the 12-Week Year for yourself so that you can read through it. It just will offer that structure, that guidance, a little stronger of a springboard for you as you are trying to, create that momentum in your life. One thing he says in here that really stands out, he says, most plans are not written with implementation in mind. And isn't that the truth? We went through, we have these visions. This is so cool. And then we might even have some goals that we create from that vision, like, oh, yeah, I should. And we fill in the blank with XYZ, but we don't actually have any strategies or tactics lined up. And so maybe you're like me, where sometimes I'll know I need to record podcasts. Maybe it's okay. I know I need to record mindset episodes for the conscious investor. And can I just sit down and start talking at you? Because that's what it would be. It'd be me just talking at you. And that would not be helpful or productive for you. And I value your time. So what I like to do is I like to remind myself, I can't just sit down and start using words at you because they'll just be meaningless. They'll be shallow words. I need to take the time to say, what is it I want to communicate with the conscious investor? What is going to support the conscious investor? How does this apply to their life? Do I have any books that I've read that I think are going to help the conscious investor further in this area, right? There is thoughtfulness that does need to come into play. A lot of times it's almost like we want to just show up to the game and, be first on the field. We want to be the starters. It's like, no, we earn that position in life. So I'm happy that you have goals and ambitions. I'm happy that you have a vision. And now it's time to create the intentions around this that allow us to gain that momentum that we long for. Okay. And we do have to narrow this down. We can't say, oh, we're going to tackle all of this all at once. So in 12-Week Year and also in Hero on a Mission, it's about finding what are those finer things that we are going for. Brian Moran suggests we can have 1 to 3 goals every 3 months. And that's our focus. We're only focusing on those 1 to 3 primary goals during that time. In Hero on a Mission, and here I said I wasn't going to do this, and now I'm referencing both books. So I'm apologizing. I'm not trying to backtrack on my words. But I do like that Donald Miller points out that as we become further advanced on our path, on our journey, we are then going to come to some crossroads with some of our interests. And we're going to have to trim, and I've talked about this before, that pruning. We're going to have to prune some things off so that we can really focus and become excellent. So the older, and I'm not saying older as in chronological age, but the more advanced we are on our path, maybe that's a better way of putting it, the more important it's going to be for us to start narrowing that path further and further and further down, niching down. I used to hate that concept. I just, I want to do it all. My whole life, I've just wanted to do it all. And yet, if I want to do something with excellence, if I want to leave an impact behind, and if I want to create a movement that outlives me and supports people in generating their own personal freedom, then I'm really going to have to be focused. Take a moment, think for yourself. Maybe you've been having that shiny object syndrome and you're just pinging around and not getting any traction in any of those areas. Be honest with yourself. In the 12-week year, Brian Moran says, vision is the best starting point for all effective performance-based coaching relationships because vision creates ownership. We have to have that vision. And I wanted to point that out because last week we did start with vision. So you've had a week to just contemplate and to dream. And that was kind of the impetus last week was dream, build in the time to dream or have that vision for life. Some people want to call it a dream. Some people call it a vision. Whatever you call it, give yourself the space to allow your mind to expand and see more and have fun with it because it should be a lot of fun. Once we have that, now we're going to work within 5 criteria. Remember, we're only tackling 1 to 3 goals at a time. And here's the criteria that we're going to have. Some of this is going to sound like SMART goals. We already know how I feel about SMART goals. Add the F at the end for feelings because our feelings must be involved. Our first criteria is to make them specific and measurable. First 2 part of SMART goals. Same exact thing here. Criteria number 1. Is this something specific where I can say, I am going to record 2 podcast episodes each week. So now I'm being very specific. I should maybe even niche down further and say I'm going to record 2 mindset podcast episodes each week. And they will be 30 minutes long. So now I'm saying, hey, I know what I'm recording. I know how long they're going to be recorded. And I know that it's going to be in the interim of 1 week's period of time. I am going to achieve this, right? You might have a goal that has to do with your health. Maybe your cholesterol is up. That's something where at one point I was like, oh, wow, it wasn't off the roof or anything, but my cholesterol was higher, a little more elevated than what I would like to see, especially with heart disease in my family. So what did I do? I looked at what that number was. I looked at my diet and I started making specific measurable changes. And then I was able to go back and have that tested and I could see, did I make the progress that I was looking for? Am I in a zone that I believe is the healthiest zone for me to operate within? We also want to state criteria number 2, state our goals in a positive way. So for example, let's go back to maybe you have high blood pressure. Maybe you have high cholesterol. Maybe it's your insulin rates are high. You know, we can have lots of different things going on aside from our weight. Weight is such a interesting metric that doesn't have much. I'm going to say it once again on my phone. Super Rad Steve, I have an ass. Let me back this up. Super Rad Steve bought a scale and it connects up to an app on our phones. And we're able to see all sorts of metrics, you know, on aside from weight. So now I'm tracking, oh, wow, what is for me as I'm getting older, what's my bone density? I want to keep track of that metric. That's going to be really important, right? And so we can decide what metrics are important in our health, and then we can track those and we can state them in a positive way. Here's an example that Brian Moran has in his book, The 12-Week Year, about stating goals positively. Now, I could state goals in a really positive way, but I think this is very succinct. And he says, focus on what you want to happen that is positive. For example, rather than focusing on a 2% error rate, you would target a 78% accuracy rate. Very similar concept to the gap and the gain. So often we are focusing on the gap between where we are and where we want to be, instead of saying, oh my gosh, look at how much I grew. Look at all the things I was able to accomplish. Yeah, there's this little bit here that I want to close in, the gap, but dang, I gained so much. I'm going to celebrate that. It triggers something different in our minds when we're focusing on the positive. And so we want to keep ourselves operating within that really healthy ecosystem. The third criteria we want to use is we want to ensure that we have a realistic stretch. So, for example, let's say I set a goal on the podcasts, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to record 1 year of podcast mindset podcast episodes in the next 2 weeks." Okay, well, I've got a clear measurable. It's a clear measurable goal. It has a timeline. That's a very positive thing. And I'm not going to go into stating it in a positive way, but is that realistic? On top of all my other responsibilities, on top of actually writing out a meaningful podcast episode and such, am I really going to be able to deliver on that? Is that realistic? Let's go into another one for our health, right? Again, going to, if we have some numbers in our health that are elevated, that are not, the healthiest version of us, are going to say, well, geez, you know what? In the next 2 weeks, I'm going to, bring all those numbers down by 65%. Like, no, that's likely not realistic. And it's also likely not the healthiest way of going about it. So we want to make sure that we are setting goals that stretch us, that make us uncomfortable, but are also attainable. We don't want to have something that is impossible because that's very, very defeating. We also want to make sure that we are accountable. Now, last week, we were talking about accountability a bit, and the number one person, the only person who can hold us accountable is us. Nobody else can hold us accountable. So I want you to keep that in mind. That's absolutely critical. I'm looking through the book. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm looking through the book because he had such a good quote on accountability, and I'm not going to be able to find it. I apologize. Head back to last week's episode. We talked about accountability in depth. And then the fifth criteria is be time bound. And so you've heard that in a lot of my examples. I'm going to do this in the next 3 weeks, the next 12 weeks, the next 2 weeks, the next day, whatever it is, you want to be clear. This is how much time I have to accomplish this. Important criteria to be following all 5 of those. Okay. And with those, you also want to be tracking and watching your lead and your lag indicators. What do I mean by that? The lag indicators are the outcome, the final product, the thing that we actually see when we step on the scale, when we get our blood tested, when we check the bank account. It's the things that we actually see that's the after effect. Okay, that's the lag. That lags behind the lead indicators. The lead indicators are all the little tiny nuanced steps that we are taking to bring those results about. And so we want to be extremely clear as to what are our lead indicators. What are the things that I'm actually going to be doing? The tactics I'm actually going to be doing that are going to bring about this outcome. If we can't name that, then we're going to do that deal where we sit down to record the podcast episode. We sit down to write the book. We go to the gym, but we don't have a clear plan. And so it just looks like all the exercise equipment's in use and we just end up going home, right? These things happen. I know, conscious investor, we're all human. So when we have clear lead indicators, then we can understand what we're going to do. When I sit down to my computer to work on this podcast episode, this is what I'm going to work on. Some of you know, I think I've mentioned, I go to a co-work space. When I walk through the door of the co-work space in town, it is a trigger for me, and it's an intentional trigger. I am going here to create. It's a place where I can put my AirPods on. I can just zone out. I can be alone. I don't have anybody coming up and stepping into my space. And it's kind of this, I know, and I have friends there, but we all know what we're there for. We're there with very purpose-filled intentions. And so I know I can go there and create. Having that clarity as to, okay, great, I'm going here. I'm going to write my newsletter. I'm going to work on social media. I'm going to work on podcast episodes, and I'm going to work on my book. These are clear things that take place there. When you go to the gym, it might be, okay, before you head out to hit the gym, or before you head out to go for a walk or a jog or whatever it is you're doing, you're setting an intention, a very clear intention. Great. I'm going here to lift weights, not just weights. I'm going here to work my upper body today. I'm going here to really work my legs. I'm going to work on my cardio. I'm going here just to have a even workout to recover, right? So we're setting a very clear intention. We know why we are doing whatever it is that we're doing. If we don't have an actual reason why, if we don't have that lead indicator, it will show on the lag. So here's what I'm going to do, conscious investor. I'm going to challenge you right now to look at the results right now in your life. Do you like the results that are being generated in your life? Are there any modifications, any differences that you would like to see in those results? If so, take a, step back 10 paces and look at, okay, what are the actions? What are the lead indicators that are generating that outcome in my life? It's going to be very, very revealing. It's really not complicated. It's not rocket science. And you are so smart and so capable, conscious investor, that I have full confidence that you're going to be able to implement some of these tools in your life right away so that you can start bringing that vision about. You don't want to waste any more time. You want to jump to it and get that vision, your purpose, your contribution. You want that potential coming out into the world. Following these criteria, the 5 criteria, being aware of your lead indicators far more than your lag indicators is absolutely critical. So again, the criteria, the 5 key criteria, make them specific and measurable, make them state them positively, ensure they are a realistic stretch, assign accountability, which for a lot of us, unless we're doing something with a group, it's on us, and be time bound. The final element is you need to be keeping score. You need to be checking. You must be checking in to make sure that you are staying on pace. So don't let yourself just kind of check out and be like, okay, cool. Well, check. I did the tactic. I'm on track. No, that might mean stepping on the scale. That might mean checking your calendar to see which workouts did I get done this week. That might be checking your bank account on a daily or more regular basis, right? That might mean checking in on one of your employees or one of your partners. Whatever it is, you need to be tracking it on a regular basis. Okay. Oh, Brian Moran suggests we do that on a weekly basis. I think you could do that more frequently, at the very least on a weekly basis. Conscious investor, that's what I have for you this week. A little bit of fire, right? So I'm so grateful that you joined me on this episode. And we have one more in this, year-end review series, and that's going to be on celebrating. So come back next Monday and we'll talk about, really celebrating. I notice that high performers struggle with this, and it's so important that we step back and we just take that a moment, because as my friend Hal Elrod says, in Miracle Equation and in Miracle Morning, it's like, okay, well, we could take 5 minutes to just like boo-hoo. That's it. And then we're done. Well, man, if we can take 5 minutes to boo-hoo, then surely we can take 5 minutes at the very least to celebrate. I also want to say this show is sponsored by 3 Keys Investments. 3 Keys Investments helps busy professionals invest passively in apartment complexes and assisted living facilities. We aim to double our investors' capital over the course of 5 years and still offer a strong preferred return backed by tangible real estate without the hassle and headache of managing it yourself. I absolutely love talking with investors looking to take their first or next steps into passive investing. Schedule a time for us to chat down. Down in the show notes. You'll get the little link down there and we can chat. And if you're hesitant because you think it's going to be like going to the DMV, just look through the reviews. We have a really great time talking. You'll notice how many people gain and grow through these phone calls. And really, truly, if my company cannot help you, I literally know someone in my strong network who can. So don't be a stranger. Let's talk tune. Well, how about not tune, but how about let's talk soon? Until next time, cheers to health, mindset, and wealth.